Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the RECA Board of Directors online engagement session, one of many engagement opportunities for stakeholders. My name is Brian Dewey, and I am the Communications and Connections Manager here at RECA. Before I pass things off to the board chair for the engagement session, I just want to briefly cover how the session will unfold. First, the board chair will go through a brief presentation outlining the board, its activities, and priorities going forward. And this will be followed by a question and answer session. If you have questions for the board, you can ask at any time using the Q&A window. You'll see the button to open the window at the bottom menu of your screen in Zoom. If you have Zoom in full screen mode, you may have to move your cursor to the top of the screen to make the menu pop down. When the presentation has concluded, I will ask the board your questions. Please note, this is an engagement session for the Board of Directors. So if you have questions that fall under the jurisdiction of an industry council, for example, a question about a certain standard of practice or rule specific to your particular industry, please save that question for the online engagement session for your industry council, which will be held in the coming weeks. The dates for those events will be listed at the end of the presentation and can be found on RECA's website. So without further ado, I will pass things off to Patricia McLeod, the board chair of RECA. Welcome, Madam Chair, and take it away.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you to all my colleagues and fellow board members and industry council chairs and industry council members who have joined us today for our opening engagement session from the newly formed RECA governance structure. Obviously, RECA itself has been ongoing through all the governance changes. And we're very excited to be part of this. We're very excited to be launching this first session. And thank you very, very much to everyone who has taken the time to be with us this morning. As noted, my name is Patricia McLeod. People know me as Patty. I am really honored to have been appointed by the minister as the chair of the board of directors, and I work extensively with the directors, with management, and also with the industry council chairs to ensure that we're lifting up this new structure to be as effective as it can be. Today, I think we're going to move to our agenda screen. Brian, we are going to do a few things that we hope you find helpful. We're going to have every member of our board make a short introduction, and the industry councils will do their introductions when they have their distinct forums. But we thought this was a great chance for everybody to meet the board. We're going to talk about, at a very high level, the amendments to the Real Estate Act, the ones that created the governance structure, as well as I can comment briefly on the legislative amendments that were proposed last week. The role of the board of directors, the role of industry councils. We've been very busy in our first 4 months, so I'll take you quickly through what we've been able to accomplish. And then our board priorities really through to December 31st of this year. And then, as Brian mentioned, we'll open it up for some questions. So that's our agenda for today. And maybe what I'll do is turn it back to you, Brian, so that you can make way for introductions. Oh, maybe I'm supposed to say, we have 7 members. There are 3 public members appointed by, he's looking at me like, come on, do it right. 3 public members appointed by Service Alberta. And then we have 4 licensees for members of industry. 1 was elected by each of the industry councils to serve on the board of directors. I'm very, very pleased to be working with this group of individuals. And so with that now, Brian, is it the right time to ask everyone to introduce themselves? There we go. So what I'll do maybe is just go in the order of the boxes on my screen because nobody knows when to put their hand up. And again, I've introduced myself, except I will say I'm a serving lawyer for, oh my gosh, close to 27 years now. Back in August of 2017, I moved from in-house general counsel roles into practicing full-time as a governance professional. And I serve on the chair, of course, of this board. I'm also the board chair of Calgary Co-op. I'm the board chair of the Calgary Film Center. And I serve on as a director of 3 additional boards, being the Beverage Container Management Board, Alberta Innovates, and the Green Line Board. So I really work full-time in governance and really pleased to be part of RECA. The next person I will ask to introduce themselves is Carrie Plett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am on the Residential Property Management Industry Council, and I was chosen by the Industry Council as the appointee to the Board of Directors. I have 10 years of experience in condominium management. I'm also the former Vice President of CCI Alberta North, and I am so pleased to be able to serve our industry and the Board of Directors and the public. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Jay, you're on mute. Had to say it once. There we go.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jai Parihar, and I have been appointed by the Minister of Service Alberta as a public member on the RECA board. I also serve as a chair of the Finance and Audit Committee of the RECA board. I have been living in Edmonton for the last 50 years, went to University of Alberta to do my Master's in Engineering and the MBA. And all of my career has been in the investment management field. And so I retired as investment professional, but prior to that, I served as the Chief Investment Officer for AIMCO, as well as President and CEO of UBC Investment Management. Currently, like I said, I'm retired, but I also serve on the board of Edmonton Community Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Next, Paul Bojakli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Bojakli, and I am a mortgage broker with Qantas Mortgage Solutions. Been in the industry for just over 15 years. I sit on the Mortgage Industry Council and was elected to that council, and I'm currently vice chair and on the board. I was past president of the Alberta Mortgage Brokers Association and passionate about the industry. So thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Charisse.
You are mute.
Yeah, she's coming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Sharish Chotalia. I'm a litigation and an immigration lawyer of over 30 years. I work in Edmonton. It was my pleasure and privilege to serve as an elected member of the Law Society of Alberta. So I hope to share and bring that governance experience to RECA. I'm very excited to move to work very closely with these amazing colleagues, and together and with our chair, who's intrepid and determined to see an accountable and vibrant RECA, and to help the industry meet its goal of serving the public. I'm excited to work with this group and look forward to the contributions I can make. I'm serving as the chair of the subcommittee on HR and governance for RECA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharish. Laura.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Laura Sharon. I'm with Canderel Management in Edmonton, senior property manager at Stantec Tower. Been in the industry for 20 some years and been involved at the ICE district for 6.5. I am currently the education committee chair of BOMA Edmonton and extremely excited to be part of this new governance structure.
Thank you, Laura. And last but definitely not least, Mr. Bill Briggs.
Hi, I'm Bill Briggs. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was elected to the Residential Real Estate Broker Council and appointed by them to the Board of Directors. I'm serving as a hearing committee chair, and I'm on the H&R and Governance Committee. I'm a past president of both the Realtors Association of Edmonton and Bavaria, and I spent 6 years on the Board of Directors of the Canadian Real Estate Association. So I've been in the business about 36 years, and I'm a RE/MAX franchise owner and a broker in Edmonton.
Thanks, Bill. And what I hope everyone sees out of the board introductions and what I've been so impressed by is the range of diversity, the exposure across Alberta, the different sectors. We've got strong HR and employment practice experience. We've got outstanding finance and investment experience and financial leadership. And without a doubt, the board has extensive governance backgrounds. So we have found it to be everything you could hope for from a diverse mix of individuals that have come together. I think with that, Brian, do we go back to a slide? And we do. Okay, so the Real Estate Amendment Act of 2020, this is what came into force, of course, on December 1st. It modernized RECA's governance structure. It created the board that we've just introduced to you and the industry council structure. And it really focused RECA's mandate on consumer protection, licensing, and enforcement. Industry councils are responsible for regulating their own sectors. And what we think the real opportunity here is making decisions and being able to focus specifically on that sector instead of a single council making decisions for all of the sectors. Really, obviously, a structure that we believe was modeled on the Alberta Insurance Council. And we are working our way through, while it seems quite simple on paper, we are working our way through all the implications for our industry to ensure that we've managed any gaps or any overlaps that are created by not having one single council considering all matters. After the act was passed in June and brought into force on December 1st, Service Alberta had to draft regulations, find the public appointees, and we ran elections, of course, for the industry councils. So we have now fully established ourselves under the new act, and we are very focused, I would say hyper-focused, on all of both the continuing the operations of RECA, but on meeting the expectations that were legislated, including some matters that I'll go through shortly. Our focus mandate does mean, and we support, that RECA is divesting itself of licensing education, and I will also talk about that more in the presentation. There were some further act clarifications that were tabled last week. They are part of the Red Tape Implementation Act of 2021. And we fully support the new amendments, and we understand that their aim is to provide clarity around board and ministerial responsibilities, as well as to provide for staggering of board terms and industry council terms to ensure that we can manage really effective succession for the governance structure. And we'll see what happens as that goes through government processes. So we'll have more to say about new amendments once they're passed, but I can confirm we're very happy to see them come into place. Next slide. Now the role of the board of directors. The board of directors has I would call sort of more traditional governance oversight accountabilities. We are going to be setting the strategic direction for RECA. All organizations need a strategic direction, even if they are a regulator, not a for-profit corporation. And this helps to support and guide decision-making. And this is the board's responsibility. We will do this, of course, in full consultation with industry councils. They have a very important role in establishing what our strategic priorities are. Fiscal oversight. This includes budget approval, risk management, and review of annual financial statements, relationship with external auditors, and so on. Now, the process for that has already begun for the 2021/22 budget. Jay Parhar is our chair of the Finance and Audit Committee, and he is working extensively with our management group to establish the appropriate assumptions and ensure that we are prepared to have our first meeting about setting the budget later in April. We are accountable as a board for preparing and filing the annual business plan with the Minister of Service Alberta, and we will do so in advance of the end of our current fiscal year, which is September 30th. We act as a coordinating body, so the industry councils are well prepared for the decision making that they undertake, as well as ensure that we have consistent decisions and we manage, as I mentioned earlier, it isn't a perfect setup. We have overlap because of the nature of our licensing in the province, as well as there can be gaps. So really, as a board, we have those individual members of each council at the board table so that we are connected into the decisions of industry councils. We also have established what we're calling the Industry Council Chair Roundtable. And really that is not a formalized committee, but it is an opportunity for industry councils and the board chair and the industry council chairs to connect, talk about common issues, talk about common processes, ensure that we're managing timelines and meeting our deliverables. And the final, very critical, all boards have this accountability, is oversight of the CEO, as well as establishing human resources process policies and performance management. So those are the key tasks of the board of directors. I think the next slide is the role of industry councils. So looks shorter, but no less difficult, is industry councils set the requirements for licensing in their sector, including licensing education, and they set the standards of practice. Now, obviously, this is not something they're creating from scratch. This is well established, but those councils are well into their planning now around some early critical priorities to review and getting that work going. And as long as those industry councils align with the standards and frameworks set by the board and the industry council's chair roundtable, each industry council sets those minimum standards for a person to be licensed independent as independent agencies. They will also have the oversight and approval of the courses that licensees are required to take. And from that process, as they make those determinations, all industry council decisions have to be transmitted through the board to the Minister of Service Alberta, who has the ultimate authority to approve for the next 2 years. Industry councils also sets the standards of practice in their sector. These are the organizations that will set or change rules. Everything that's in place now is fine. But again, any changes have to be submitted through the board to the minister. So if you have feedback on particular rules or standards in your sector, and I did see a question already posted, I'll respond to right now, which is if you believe that there's red tape reduction opportunities, it is your industry council who will take that advice and consider it and go through the process to consider. So it is not the board who will be able to mandate red tape reduction, but certainly if you have ideas and suggestions around opportunities to reduce red tape, we are keenly interested. The other comment I'll make is all briefing notes and due diligence background work on any rule setting or any decision at the board includes a mandatory requirement to assess whether it's adding red tape, reducing red tape, or has a red tape reduction impact. So we are very mindful of looking for opportunities for red tape reduction. Next. So board activities in the first 4 months. It feels like a whirlwind. I hope my board colleagues have the same impression I do. It's been a tremendous number of meetings and we've been working really, really hard. First, of course, we went through an extensive onboarding process. All board and industry council members underwent multi-day onboarding processes in December and January. And we learned about the industry, about regulation, about the history of regulation in Alberta. We went through the processes that got us to this new structure and challenges, I think, that were certainly part of the legacy of what we've taken on, and current and ongoing issues. Then, in addition to some introductory board meetings to deal with short-term items, we had governance training. Now, this is legislated requirement, but I think it was outstanding process to go through. Any board should consider having the kind of extensive governance training we had, again, multi-day. And we went through everything from what I'd call sort of governance 101 and fiduciary basics to reviewing some of the challenges that were identified in the KPMG report and talking through some of those challenges and what we were doing to address those. Talking through the mandated governance requirements that are now in the legislation, and really talking through, I think at the highest level, the collaboration and transparency and communication that we're going to need as a group of 23 governors sitting in 27 roles. It's a very large structure, comes with its challenges, around how we're going to be really effective as governors, how we're going to manage conflicts of interest, how we're going to manage having robust conversation at the table, but our duty to the public and our duty to the regulator. So it was, I hope everybody felt a really effective process. And recognize that we're doing this entire lift in a world where we haven't met each other yet. And actually, I was thinking on this last night, it's hard to believe we haven't met each other yet. We really are actually through this forum, I think, getting to know each other somewhat. It's not the same as in person, but we're doing this work while we're all on boxes on a screen. And I really commend everybody for how hard that is and how hard they're working. Another item that we kind of were able to check off is that, of course, all the industry council election processes were done before the board and councils were formally stood up. But there was a one seat that remained vacant, and we had the by-election in early February. And so we were able to complete that. We have established board committees, and as I mentioned, the Industry Council Chairs Roundtable process. The committees of the board, there are 3 standing committees: Budget, Finance and Audit Committee, chaired by Jay, a Governance and Human Resources Committee, which is chaired by Sharice, and a Hearings Committee, which is chaired by Bill Briggs. Now, the Hearings Committee, one of the changes that happened with the legislation was that board members and industry council members are no longer permitted to serve on hearing panels. So the Hearings Committee is formed to manage process and accountabilities around establishing panels and to ensure we have a healthy roster. And there will be more information on this coming because we will be going out to the industry and to public members to find additional panel roster members. So we created those committees, and they all have their work plans, terms of reference, have dug in and are doing really good work. We've launched our CEO search, and those postings are public, and we're excited about that process. We've approved a stakeholder engagement policy that's been adapted, of course, to reflect the new governance structure. And we have had the chance to meet with multiple stakeholders. Again, I feel like I've had the virtual tour of Alberta, but all being meetings online, of course, and not in person. And really excited about the relationships that are starting to really get a hold again. And we've begun the education divestment process. That is a longer term planning process, and industry councils have invested extensive amounts of time already into that, and we're well underway. So that's the first 4 months. Then we have what we're doing going forward, which is also extensive. So obviously we're going to hire our CEO, and we're going to onboard our CEO. And onboarding an executive leader is a time-consuming process. We will be doing that very, very diligently. As mentioned, we have the budget analysis, and the 2021/22 business plan has to be filed. And the audit committee is working very hard on the assumptions. The education divestment framework is obviously a very big task and a very high priority. It is, let me say this. While there's some sense that it has changed under the amendments that were tabled last week, it is primarily an accountability of the industry councils to establish competencies, to establish examination requirements, to establish what is needed from licensing and from education in order to protect the public and ensure the professionalism of the industry. The role that wasn't clear and is clearer now with the amendments that were tabled is that the board has a role, and the role of the board is to ensure consistency between councils, to ensure that I'm sorry, my apologies, to ensure that we have a good quality relationship with education providers, that we are resourced to manage the accountabilities that RECA retains. We have budgeting issues, obviously. This is a revenue change. So we've got to ensure that we've managed not only the budget implications, but that we can, again, hire or retain the folks that are needed to liaise. So that is what the board's role will be, is really on the ultimate collection of all of the industry council work around the divestment of education. And industry councils have struck a subcommittee of their members to ensure that communication and collaboration between industry councils, while they each address their own unique licensing needs, that this is done in a really collaborative, consistent manner. So it's a little murky, but really what we're doing is, again, ensuring that the board has that broader risk management, stakeholder management, reputation management, and budget oversight to a process that each industry council is managing, in accordance with its sectoral needs. It's not simple. Next, additional bylaws. So there's mandated bylaws under the Real Estate Act that was proclaimed on December 1st, and those are governance, dispute resolution, and governance training. Those have to be filed by June 30th. They are required to be approved by the minister by end of year, but to be in that process, to be completed by December 1st under the Service Alberta requirements, we actually have to file in June. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but there's some work there. There are additional bylaws that we'll be filing. We're required to file by August 31st, and one is our transition plan. So education divestment is not something we're sitting on, as I've obviously mentioned, and we have to have ministerial approval of our transition plan. And under the amendments that, again, were tabled last week, the board now has the ability to establish criteria and election processes. So we are going to file that as well in bylaw, and we're anticipating that will be by August 31st. So some really extensive governance and bylaw review is underway right now. Strategic planning. So there was a strategic plan for the organization. It expired in 2020, obviously, with all that was going on. That was just allowed to expire, and we are going to go through an extensive process. This is the start of it, but to set a new strategic plan. However, it is not going to be something we set in the next 2 months. We want, as a board and industry council framework, to not only go through some thoughtful engagement on it, but allow all of the mandated and shorter term priorities and getting a new leader in place and onboarded and settled in to all occur, so that we can have a thoughtful strategic plan evolve out of that. But that is a very key priority. We will be establishing this year the CEO performance and assessment processes and review of HR policies and processes. And we're going to be establishing board and industry governance council skills matrix, again, board effectiveness processes by the end of the year, so that we're in good shape after 1 full year of this structure being in place to be able to continuously improve. And that's a very important value of our governance organization. So that's some of the board priorities that we're in. I think the final slide that I have, and I'll stop talking, or at least stop talking at you. These are the engagement sessions that are being scheduled for each of the various industry councils. So, we really encourage, depending on the sector you're part of, that you challenge them as much as I know you're going to challenge me, and bring forward any industry sector specific issues to those sessions. And then I think with that, we're back to you, Brian, to manage Q&A.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're in the question and answer portion of today's online engagement session. If you just follow the instructions on the screen there, you can ask a question. We will try to get to all the questions that we can. So I'll just start things off with a bit of an easy one, Madam Chair. Someone wants to know what date will RECA start licensing and regulating condominium managers?
December 1st. That is an easy one. Yay! Thanks for the softball. December 1st, we have actually transmitted through the board. The Industry Council has drafted the proposed rules and approved the proposed rules. There's been a committee that was struck and actually lived and evolved with this for some time. And we've submitted those to the minister. We will wait for feedback and approval, and then we will be able to launch into obtaining and ensuring that there's the licensing, pre-licensing education provided, all in advance of December 1st. So we're good to go.
That's great. Next question. Someone wants to know, will industry fees be going up?
Well, industry fees. So clearly, as mentioned, we're going through the budgeting process. The short answer is I don't know. We have to assess the impact of the revenue that we divest of as part of education investment, what the impact of that is, what the direct costs associated with that is, and what else we can do. So I can say it is in process, but we're not divesting education, in the short term. We have until December 1st, 2022. That doesn't mean that's when it will happen, but we have some time. So there's no short-term impact to fees, and we'll certainly be communicating as we go along.
Great, thank you. Another easy one, perhaps, is someone wants to know when will we have a permanent executive director?
So great question. The plan is that we'd be interviewing by mid to late May, and to shortlist down to, we hope, 2 to 3. We're hoping to bring to the board and have a decision in June. The actual fixed date to start really depends on whether the individual we choose has any kind of extensive notice period for wherever they're coming from. But we are certainly on track to have a decision to our board in June, pending any challenges we have in finding great individuals, which I don't anticipate.
Great. Perhaps one that's a little more challenging is the industry still self-regulated under this new governance model?
Oh, absolutely. There is obviously an increase in the number of public members that were appointed. Those members were really appointed on a skills basis around financial and some governance and legal and regulatory background. But every council and the board are more than majority populated by industry members representing their sectors, and all actually have quite extensive experience. There's some real depth of experience in the industry. I'm not looking at you, Bill. I'm not saying it's you. I'm just saying we've got some real depth and leadership across all the different sectors that have been brought to the board. So it is absolutely self-regulating in every manner of that.
Great. Lots of questions coming in, just coming through them.
Mm-hmm. Well, while you're doing that, I'm just going to clarify one thing. Carrie pointed to something in the chat that I want to clarify under the condominium management question that I answered, which is that the competencies for condominium management are still under review with that industry council. What I was referencing is the rules for having oversight and regulatory oversight of condominium management. That's what's been transmitted. So competencies are still work underway and will be submitted shortly.
Great. We have one, you talked about this a little bit during the presentation on the sort of the ministerial review of new rules and bylaws and that sort of thing. Someone's wondering if you can provide a little more detail about that bylaw review process by the minister, if you know anything.
Oh, the black box.
What, if there's a framework and timing for.
Oh, sure. So what the act requires, this is one of the areas where it seems quite simple until you go through it once, but what the act specifically requires is that if there's a rules change or a new rule being created, once the industry council has passed it, the board is tasked with transmitting that straight through to the minister. And we've actually, with the condominium management rules, we had our first opportunity to test what that process is. And here's what we're learning is we do transmit it through to the minister. We copy Service Alberta. They do have, and I don't know entirely what their process is, but they do have a review of it by Service Alberta in order to, I guess, be able to advise the minister if there's anything untoward or concerning around what's being submitted. And then we will receive some type of written response. Presumably, if we've done our job well, it will just be ministerial approval, but it may be further questions. So we're new to the process, and even with the minister's office when we transmitted, they didn't have answers to all our questions about what we should submit, how much background they want, et cetera. So we're still working through what this process looks like, but that's what I understand so far.
Great. The next question several people have asked. It's will the board be implementing all of the KPMG report recommendations?
Oh, that's an outstanding question. Thank you. So just to level set in case anybody doesn't know what the KPMG report was, it was a report written for the Minister of Service Alberta. It was released approximately 2 years ago. And the government had been made aware of issues with prior council and management leadership, commissioned a governance review by KPMG. A report was issued, and then the minister acted on those recommendations. So the end result of that report is this new RECA board and industry council structure and a number of mandated governance requirements. I've already referenced a few of them, things like dispute resolution bylaw, governance training mandatory within the first year of being appointed, those types of things were all incorporated into the amended Real Estate Act. So we are the result of that report, and we are really firmly focused on the industry's and RECA's path forward. We use the KPMG report extensively, and I'm just going to go through a couple of those. Most of the recommendations have been addressed by the structural changes, or in some cases have become irrelevant because they were recommendations if the government chose not to change the industry council structure that was in place before. So we have confirmed, obviously, the vast majority were addressed by the amended Act. The amended Act has enshrined some aspects of the recommendations that we are in process of meeting. For example, executive director, or what we're calling the CEO performance reviews, is a recommendation. We absolutely will implement that process once we have one. The dispute resolution bylaw, the governance training that I've mentioned, all of that was mandated by the Act. We've stayed very mindful of the KPMG report and reviewed recommendations and outcomes at our orientation session, and it formed the backbone of much of the discussion in our governance training. So we've discussed it at quite a bit of length in both of those processes. And for the remaining items, the Governance and Human Resources Committee of the board has accountability to project manage and ensure that we are tracking against any remaining items. Now, top of mind, for example, enterprise risk management was a noted governance recommendation. And Jay's committee, the Audit and Finance Committee, will absolutely be undertaking with management to establish a robust enterprise risk management. That is not something you do in 30 days, but it will be managed until we can confirm that we've, to our judgment, have met that recommendation. Another one would be board effectiveness processes, and so we will be doing that. You know, I'm really delighted to say that the governors, industry council members and board members of RECA are working really, really hard and really well together. Much of what was reflected in that report was clearly a breakdown of trust and communication and transparency. And there's just no evidence that there's any challenge in that respect right now. They're doing an outstanding job of leaning into their roles. And we recognize that the challenges of the prior structure existed. We're building the processes, a code of conduct, and a governance bylaw that address those prior learnings and bring them forward. But we don't carry the same challenges. It's a different structure now. And so we are really focused forward on continuing to build a new governance model, meet our mandate under the Act, and ensure that RECA is ready for future industry changes and challenges.
Great. Next question is a particular favorite of mine because they mentioned the February regulator newsletter. Yay, please read that, everyone, and read the newsletters. They say that the newsletter mentioned creating a roundtable with the board and industry council chairs. They just want to know what steps are you taking to make sure decision capacity remains with the respective governing bodies as opposed to the roundtable, and how RECA will report on the activities of the roundtable.
Okay, well, the roundtable is just a communications process. I mean, it's instead of having everything being drafted into memo or emails, it's an opportunity to bring processes and updates to a group of individuals. So it's really not a structured committee. It has no terms of reference. It has no decision-making authority. So the idea, really, when you have all these multiple layers of a governance framework, was how do you build the bridge and ensure that that the industry councils are talking amongst themselves. So I think one of the things that was done well with the board having representatives from industry councils on it is that the board feels very well informed and well advised, and also board discussions can go back to industry councils. Where the challenge is between industry councils in their overlap and in potential gaps and consideration of issues that may have impact to others. That we've had some discussions where an industry council chair has noted something they're finding in their sector that they believe may have value for two other industry councils to consider in their agendas. So it is really a communication tool. It has no decision-making authority. So if the industry council chairs agree with something that's going to go back into the agenda for the council, that's where the decision-making happens. It is really a way for us to ensure that it's not just board to industry council, it's industry councils amongst themselves. And right now it's meeting more frequently because we're doing a lot of building of processes. Once we have processes in place and agendas are really underway, and their priorities and their, I know some of the industry councils have lists this long of things they'd love to look into. Well, you can't do it all in the first 60 days. So as they move into those, we may find the chairs roundtable is something that meets once a year to discuss high level issues. But right now, it's really helping build that relationship. And again, it's also a tool, because we cannot meet in person. We can't meet as a group of 23, can't meet as a group of 7. Industry councils can't meet as a group of 5. It's just another way for us to get to know each other and build the relationship.
Fantastic. On to another question that we're getting multiple questions about. People are asking about RECA's building, and they say they have concerns about the purchase. They just want to know if the board is looking at the purchase of the building.
Yeah, so very interesting, and thank you for raising that. We've heard that now as a new member to the industry. Comments like that. As a public member, wasn't aware of the history or the concerns around the building. So I can confirm the following. I mean, every year RECA undergoes a third-party audit of its financials. No concerns have ever been raised regarding RECA building by third-party professionals. And certainly if you're aware of any facts that we should know, we would ask that you submit those to us. We are undertaking, I think, 2 things in response to the questions. One, we as a board need to get up to speed on what happened with the decision-making, what the business for the building was. And our management group is pulling that together. It's out of prior board records from much earlier in the past decade. So we're going to make sure we're familiar with what the decisions and rationale are. I think more importantly right now is the going forward, what are we going to do with the building? And so I know the audit committee is going to undertake evaluation to ensure that we are very current and accurate with our current valuation of the building. And secondly, is we're going to go through a full valuation or business case review of what's the business case for the building today. Are we doing well by RECA by having it as compared to leasing or renting somewhere else? What is it costing us? What are the risks associated with it? So we're going to really undertake a forward-looking review. Other than we do as a board want to get up to speed on why prior council decided to purchase a building. We'll get familiar with that. But otherwise, we own the building. So we really have to decide what's the right thing going forward.
Thank you. Your microphone is going in and out a bit, Madam Chair. I don't know if you can adjust it a little.
It's just on my computer. So is that better?
So far, yeah, thanks.
Just shake my computer.
Give it a hit. So another question kind of came up fairly early was, will the board be reviewing how it publicizes penalties?
Will the board be doing what?
Be reviewing how it publicizes decisions and penalties.
Oh, the discipline publication. Yep. We're currently under review with that. We've had some questions on that. And really it comes down fundamentally to a commitment to openness and transparency, but I know that is on the industry council agenda.
Great. Just quickly going through the questions here. So another question about education. Mm-hmm. RECA, you said divesting RECA's education, the deadline is December 1st, 2022. So is there a reason that RECA is keeping education for now and not divesting now?
Yeah, well, so it's actually a complex process. It's not as simple as flipping a switch, because ultimately our duty and mandate is protection of the public, and that's through the integrity and professionalism of those who practice in the sector. Each industry council is working really hard through a process right now to ensure competencies are fully reviewed and vetted and approved. And we are working through collaboratively as a whole on the transition plan. So that has to be submitted to the minister, and the competencies have to be submitted to the minister. So, there is no way to flip a switch when competencies are under review and could be adjusted, as well as the plans have to be approved. The second part of this is the examinations process now, which RECA fully retains, has to be adjusted. Examinations now are built into the provision of the course, and are multiple choice or other formats. Now examinations have to be done in a manner that they test against competencies regardless of the manner in which the training is conducted. So third-party providers can conduct training in person, online, tutorial format, case study, whatever they feel is the right way to do it. We have to build the examinations now to less reflect the format and more ensure that they could be appropriately testing across a number of different formats. So that is a whole portion, plus the ability to transmit to potential course providers the competencies, the examination goals, and the process happens after we have ministerial approval, and that has actually been mandated by the minister. So it is not something we are actually in the position to flip a switch on, and is thoughtfully underway. So until that divestment occurs, licensing education obviously remains with RECA. That's just to ensure that individuals continue to join the profession.
Thank you. Next question, I think you can probably talk about extensively, and you you answering the question is kind of an answer to this question. Is there a plan in place for the new board to rebuild trust with industry and the regulator?
Well, certainly this session, I'm hoping we're doing that. I think it starts with trust and transparency and communication amongst the governors. And I can say, again, my opinion, they can jump in if they wish. I think that is being really well established right now. So how we treat each other, it will be a big part of how we represent to the industry. We've been all over this province virtually, top to bottom, from McMurray down to Lethbridge, and to meet with folks. My door is open. Our industry council chairs' doors are open, and we're working really hard to meet everybody. Again, in this virtual world, it's not like we can go to one conference and everybody can swarm us. And then third, I think it's delivering against all of the items, not only that we've done so far, but that are both mandated and that we've publicly stated we're going to deliver. And that takes time. And, the one thing I've asked for is the opportunity. We're going to make mistakes. Of course, we're going to make mistakes, but is to fail forward. And, any mistake we make or misstep we make is ours to own and ours to recover from. So, it's a two-way street. We have to be given the time and opportunity to deliver. But what I can say on behalf of the board and industry councils is how hard and diligently and enthusiastically this group of people are working together to undertake, building this new structure.
Great. For everyone asking questions, I'm noticing a lot of questions that have to do with industry council matters, particular standards of practice within industry sectors. I just please ask that you save those questions for the industry council online engagement sessions, and they'll be able to answer them. Moving on. So we have several questions about the new amendments to the bill. They just want to know how government decided to come up with those amendments.
Well, I think it was a combination of feedback they were getting and questions they were getting from industry about various aspects of some of the opening decisions we have to make, which is education, divestment, and the by-election process. Made it clear that there were gaps that needed to be clarified. So we don't know what consultation process they went through. I have a relationship as the board chair to the minister and to Service Alberta. So we certainly saw some of the challenges with establishing criteria for elections. And we know that going forward, we want that to be really clear so that we can attract, I don't think we can do better than the individuals that have come forward, but that we continue to attract the types of individuals that are currently sitting at those tables, and that we're very clear about that. So I think it was just, building a governance structure in a vacuum, which is that the organization itself had no executive director and had no board in place. The stakeholder committees that were tasked with trying to make recommendations in advance, determined some things that weren't in the legislation. And so the minister is seeking to codify some of that. We're very supportive. There's nothing in there. I mean, the staggering of terms was, basically a comment both from Service Alberta to us and us to them saying, holy smokes, in 3 years, the entire structure could turn over. Like, is that really what you intended? And they went, oh, that's not a great idea. So I think some of it is just as we go through the process, and that needed some clarification.
Great, thanks. We have about 5 minutes left, maybe time for one or two more questions. This one is a broad question. The person wants to know, is there one key thing that the board is going to be focused on right away? What's the one key activity that the board is most focused on in the immediate future?
Oh, that's such a hard question because it feels like we're focused on a lot. Boy, if there's one thing I know we need to get right, it's the hiring of the CEO. I don't think there's any more pressure on us now that we've gotten started and we've had our meetings and we're setting up our processes. I don't think there's anything more important, more alignment amongst all 23 individuals is the importance of the hiring of that role. I'm hoping, I'm looking at my fellow board members, they're nodding. I think that's right.
Oddly enough, the latter part of the question was besides the hiring of the new CEO.
Oh, you didn't tell me that. Okay, besides the hiring, I would say it is maybe, oh gosh, like it's like, as a chair, I've heard somebody say this, every part of the organization is like my kid and I don't have one favorite over another, but I would say we're focused next, and I'm cheating and I'm tying them together, but between education, divestment, and the impact that has on our business planning. So, those are sort of joined at the hip from a board perspective. For industry councils, my guess is that's going to be that education divestment processes and ensuring that there is no drop off in our attention to protection of the public. But for us, it's education divestment insofar as it really relates to our overall ability to plan for, manage, and resource the organization.
Great. And we have 3 minutes left. We still have a lot of questions about education divestment, particularly around the how the industry, like what decisions would the industry council be making versus the board in divesting education. People are still a little confused on that.
I think and this is a process we're working through. So, we'll look back on it and we'll know exactly. Again, the industry councils are fully accountable for the setting of the standards, the competencies, the examination process that will demonstrate competencies, the licensing of members into their sector. Industry council. The board's role is to ensure that we've got a cohesive process, that we're resourced for the remaining accountabilities that RECA retains. So the budget implications, the human resources component to support both licensing and examination processes, and ensuring that no sector gets left behind. And so really, I think we're just part of working with them to ensure that all aspects and criteria and parts of this decision that need to be considered are done. And our job is really to make sure that RECA, the organization, can resource the expectations that the industry council set. Hope that answers it.
I think so. And I think this will probably be our last question. It has to do with the hearing panels. They say that the KPMG report had mentioned that, RECA's hearing panels might not have been administering cases equally. Maybe you can just talk about how the hearing panel process works now, and how we're trying to make sure that we have administrative justice fairness going forward.
Oof. So that's a great question. Not as easily answered, I think. Right now, one of the changes that the Real Estate Act made is that council members are no longer involved so council members for us, meaning both board and industry council members, are no longer involved in that process. So I think that addresses some of the challenges. The hearings committee of the board is focused on ensuring we have a really strong panel roster that can be reviewed in order to staff hearings and be appropriately trained for hearings. And so they're going to go through a full training process this fall, including offering it to the existing members of that roster, as well as new, to ensure that everybody is current in administrative law functions and decision writing and the requirements. And so there's staff within RECA that are outstanding, really making sure that any conflicts of interest associated with assigning a panel member to a hearing has all been reviewed and managed, that there's no conflicts of interest. So, I think between the restructuring, the fact that the board has oversight in ensuring that hearing panels are assigned, and ensuring that the hearing panel roster is very high quality, I think those are what will address any issues that were raised in the report. At least I hope.
Yep.
There's a couple of things I wanted to comment, Brian. I know folks have been sending in questions about industry councils, and yes, we ask that you certainly raise those. We will absolutely have a record of those, and we will ensure that the industry councils receive those questions in advance. So either they're preparing them in their comments or that they're prepared to answer those. So we will not lose any questions that you've raised here. So please know that. And we will have more opportunities to engage with the board. We as I mentioned, we're going to be launching into a lengthy, thoughtful engagement process around strategic planning. So we will have more sessions, and hopefully as we have more new items, of course, as we're checking the boxes on all that list that I gave you, and the regulator and other communications we will take the questions that we've received today, and we will continue to make sure we report out against progress on all of these things. So I just wanted to offer those comments.
Great, thank you. It's 10:02. I think we are at time for the event. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to the other board members. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. I just want to let you all know that this will be available on RECA's website later on. If you want to watch it again, or if in case you know someone who would be interested who missed it. Again, hopefully this is a regular thing we do in the future, and it's a great way to engage with all the industry. So thank you everyone for taking the time and taking part in self-regulation.
Thank you very, very much. We really, really appreciate it.